Hey there, happy Thursday. This is our Thursday Live, and I'm Sharon Feldman. If you are new to my group, oh my goodness, welcome. I am a registered psychotherapist, I'm a parent coach, and we are in this community because we want to learn how to level up our parenting and show up in the best possible way for ourselves, for our children, for our families. Today, we're going to talk about the difference between reactive parenting and responsive parenting. And I actually just want to change my glasses because I'm wearing the wrong ones. This is what happens when you go live, but that's okay. Y'all would rather I be able to see what I'm doing. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about parenting. People talk about styles and strategies, and there's all kinds of terminology out there, but I really like to keep it simple and plain and use kind of plain English in a way. So around here, I talk a lot about responsive parenting, and then a little bit later, I'm going to talk about reflective parenting. So let's talk about what the difference is. So reactive parenting is what happens in the heat of the moment. It's that automatic, you know, emotionally driven way that you react to your kid. And it's usually rooted in your own stress. It's rooted in fear. It's rooted in your own unmet needs, right? So, an example of reactive parenting is your kid is doing something that you don't want them doing, and you're like, stop that right now, right? Quit it. Stop. Be quiet. All of those types of in the moment responses, directives, are what we call reactive parenting because you're just reacting in the moment to whatever you're feeling. You're bothered by what they're doing. Sometimes our kids aren't doing anything, wrong. They're just playing loudly or, playing music loudly. Sometimes they're just being themselves. And our own stress, our own preoccupation, our own, like, whatever it is we're doing around them, and our own unmet needs leads to this reactive parenting. And it happens. I'm not suggesting that this is possible to eliminate it altogether. Clearly, it's not because we're human. But the goal is that this is not most of what goes on between you. So that's reactive parenting. So responsive parenting is what we advocate, right? And it's built into the word. We want to be responding to a child. When we are responsive, it is intentional and it is grounded. It involves pausing, not for a very long time, but pausing. It involves regulating yourself first, and it involves choosing how to respond, right? Versus that quick in the moment shout or directive. Um, and it's based on the child's needs, and it's based on being responsive and conscious and intentionally aware of their developmental stage. So, examples of this are taking a breath, um, getting on their level if you need to, right? I often say, like, stop what you're doing and turn and face them so that you are present with them, as opposed to continuing to do what you're doing and just shouting at them without any kind of connectivity. So taking a breath, getting on their level, saying, I see there's a problem here. I see that you're upset, or I see that you're trying to do X, Y, Z. Let's figure this out together. That's responsive. Okay. I want you to think about this in the context of many other interactions you have with many other people. In particular, I want you to think about this in the context of your job. If you have a job or have ever had a job, how would you respond? Would you be responsive or reactive with your boss, Would you be responsive or reactive with your coworkers? Would you be responsive or reactive with your customers? Right? We are on our best behavior with those people. And it is because we have outcomes attached to that, right? So if it's a customer, well, we want them to buy from us. We want them to remain being our customer. So we are going, even if that customer is abrasive or rude, or just kind of ill-mannered, we're not going to lead with our emotion, and we're not going to be reactive. We're going to be responsive. We're going to pause, and we're going to think through what we're going to say, because we have this foundational desire to retain connection with that customer so that they stay a customer. Okay? So we're going to do that with our boss. Our boss comes in. We're not going to be reactive with our boss. We're going to be responsive. We're going to utilize those examples. We're going to take a breath, maybe. We're going to pause and slow down the way we speak. We're going to say, I understand. Even if they're kind of criticizing us, we're going to say, I hear what you're saying, or I understand, or, you're going to be in the conversation with them, and you're going to kind of meet them on a certain level and not be reactive. Why? Because you need your job. And so you need to behave in a certain way to keep your job. Okay? So given these examples, you know already right now that you're capable of doing what it is I'm suggesting under stressful circumstances. Your boss is telling you you've done something wrong, or telling you you have to work extra hours, or whatever's happening. Your coworkers at a meeting are, criticizing your presentation, or something's happening. A customer is kind of being, a little bit rude. You are fully capable in those moments of keeping yourself, exercising more control over yourself than you think. And there is nothing different between that and parenting. Remember, in the other examples, we had, your job matters to you. So you have this kind of long range view. Your job matters to you. You need to keep that job. You have financial obligations attached to the longevity of your job. So you have that in mind when you're interacting with everybody at your job, because you know that there are outcomes related to your behavior. And I want you to think about that. There are outcomes related to your behavior. It is exactly the same with your child and with your children. There are outcomes related to your behavior with your child. Okay? So responsive parenting involves pausing, taking a breath, getting on their level, meaning, getting attuned to them, and saying things like, I see there's a problem, or I see, let's work this out. So why does this matter? Why does it matter? Why does it matter to focus on, or work on, or consider developing the skills to be more responsive to your children more often? The first is because connection is more important than control. All of those reactive behaviors are about control. You trying to control your child, trying to kind of dictate what they do and what they don't do. And remember those long range outcomes. Your connection to them is going to positively influence the long range outcomes for your child, which is really what you're working on every single day. The same way that if you planted a tree outside, if you planted a seed outside, every day you would do something to tend to that seed, the ground, the water, the sunlight. You would do something small because your long range plan is to grow a tree, a plant, a bush. Your long range plan with your child is that they grow into whole, mentally and emotionally competent and balanced adults. So you're doing this in small ways, and all those small ways, like watering the plant and checking the soil, are those moments of connection all throughout the day. Okay? So connection matters more than control. Responsive parenting builds that trust. Just like your work environment with your boss and your colleagues, right? The way that you interact with people builds people's trust, helps you feel safe in that environment, helps others feel safe. Maybe you are the boss at work as well, right? You are responsible for people's trust and people's safety, which with your kids helps them learn. When kids feel emotional safety, which is what we cultivate with responsive parenting, they are safe. Their brain is then allowed to learn because they're not in a protective state. Okay. Another reason it's important is because we are, as parents, always, always, always modeling emotional intelligence. We are modeling for our kids how to handle feelings. So if you are super stressed out because you haven't managed your stress well, and you have things on the brain, legit things, legit adult things. So you've got a lot of stress going on, you're distracted or focused on something, and your kid is doing something kid-ish, meaning they're being a kid, and you react in a harsh way, you are teaching your child that that's how to handle emotions. Because no matter what, you are always modeling, always. So that's the other reason it's important. Connection matters more than correction. We are always modeling. And then the third reason it's really important to focus on responsive parenting is because we want to be always working to break whatever intergenerational cycle we are in. And by that I mean every parent who is parenting another human brings with them into parenting the way that they were parented. Okay? So you're either going to replicate that, and I call that parenting by default, right? So it's by default. You're not really thinking about it. It's kind of unconscious. And you're kind of acting as a parent towards your kids in a similar way that you were treated as a child, right? It's important to really take a look at that and choose by design what you want to carry forward and what you'd like to perhaps rewrite. Because as a parent, you are in the process of creating a legacy. You are responding to the legacy that you have, and you are entrusted with writing the legacy for your kids, and you can rewrite that. So being responsive is about pausing and choosing and being intentional and having a long range goal, because we're playing the long game in parenting. So it's important to be rewriting that legacy. Okay, so here are the tips for becoming more responsive as a parent. So the first one I've mentioned already is to pause before you react. We want to practice a pause. We want to take a deep breath. Ideally, you can take a deep breath for a count of 5. We can do it right here. Let's take a deep breath together for a count of 5. 1. And let it out. What that does, that simple, simple, simple action creates a space. We are always looking to practice this, creates a space between your child's behavior and your response. There needs to be a space between what your child is doing and what you do next. And the easiest practice is to take a breath. So that's the first one. Second step or tip I want to offer is to get curious. So we want to cultivate curiosity. The curiosity is just you wondering what's going on here. If your child is actually, yelling, having some kind of emotional, upheaval, if, their behavior is kind of off track in some way, different than just being reactive and shutting it down because that behavior is deemed by you to be a problem. You can manage that behavior by going beneath it with curiosity, right? If I'm cooking something and it's not working. Listen, last night I was trying to cook potatoes, like just bake them in the oven, and they were not softening. Like no matter what I did, they were in the oven for so long. I have made potatoes for years. I don't know what was going on with them. But I had to get curious about it, right? Curious about what's up with this potato. Like what is happening? My curiosity, like when you think about cooking or when you think about any other way that you solve a problem in your work life, in your domestic management, with your friends, your work and your relationship with your child is the same. So get curious. Why? Why is this behavior happening? Like genuine curiosity, not curiosity and, curiosity covered judgment. Because the truth is, it's impossible for a human being to be curious and judgmental at the same time. It is physically, biologically, and emotionally impossible. And if you want to argue with me, let's have that conversation. We are mostly judgmental. If the kid is doing something that is getting under my skin, I am judging them. I am judging the behavior and I am judging my child. And the language that we use as reactive parents is we say things like, my kid is bugging me. He's bugging me. And sometimes that's what we say. We don't even say, my kid bouncing the ball in the room with me is bugging me. Because that's the behavior, not my kid. My kid isn't bugging me. My kid is just being a kid. He might be bouncing a ball near me, and the bouncing of the ball is getting under my skin. Why? Because I have a need. I have a need for quiet. I have a need for... So it's entirely about me. My kid is just being a kid. And bouncing a ball in and of itself is not a problem. It is a neutral thing. How I judge it, how I feel about it, and what's going on for me, how much stress I'm under, what I'm distracted by, what I'm thinking about, that is going to inform how I behave. So we want to get curious. What's really going on here? What is my child communicating to me with their behavior? Right? What I sometimes call their off-track behavior. So when we shift into this curiosity, it really helps. It really helps to learn to practice this responsive parenting where we are pausing and intentional rather than just reacting from our own emotion. Which leads us to the third part of this, which is about regulating yourself first. Your kids are always looking to you to co-regulate. What does that mean? It means energetically, our kids are borrowing our nervous system regulation. They're borrowing. It's like they're drinking from the tap. Okay? If the tap of our nervous system is dysregulated, then they're going to drink that water. They're going to get dysregulated. They're going to stay dysregulated. If they're already dysregulated because they're kids and they don't have regulation skills yet, they are building them, they need to borrow ours. They need to drink from the fountain of our regulation, of our energy. So that means our job is to regulate ourselves first. Think about a paramedic who shows up. You've called for the paramedic because somebody's having trouble breathing, and the paramedic arrives and is like, oh my God, what's going on? Okay. And they're all chaotic, right? What would happen? Like that would be a paramedic borrowing the dysregulated energy in the room. We want that paramedic to show up calm, and we want their calm to have a calming effect on us. So your job is to regulate yourself first, right? You can try what are called grounding techniques if you've heard this before. Literally, the easiest way to think about grounding is to think about where you touch a surface. So if you're standing, you focus your attention on your feet on the ground. If you're sitting in your car, you focus your attention on where your bottom is touching the seat. If you're sitting on the couch, same thing. If you're leaning, focus your attention on where your back or your backside is touching the wall. That's grounding. And this idea of focusing your attention, I want you to think about when you are watching a performance, you're watching somebody on stage in a live performance. There's the person on stage, and then there's somebody in the booth who has the spotlight control, right? Do you ever watch a show where the character walks over here and the spotlight is somewhere else, and then that person who is working the spotlight has to move the spotlight onto the performer, okay? That is called focusing our attention. The spotlight tells us where to focus our attention on stage. You need to be practicing focusing your attention, the attention of your mind. You're actually working on where your focus is. Think about that like a spotlight. As I sit here with you talking here, I can choose to focus my attention on my seat in this chair. And there's actually an energetic feeling that you will experience that I cannot describe to you, but if you've watched this, you can comment. If you practice this, you practice focusing your attention on something, your hand on a table, your foot on the ground, your seat in a chair. You can actually feel that. And you are taking your brain to the gym every time you do it. I have a really fun thing that I think about sometimes when I put my hands together, like which hand is feeling the other hand? Or if you put your hand on your cheek, is your hand feeling your cheek or is your cheek feeling your hand? So these are ways to kind of think about where's my focus? I used to laugh about one of my daughters, my youngest, who has ADHD, when she was learning to drive. She had to drive in the rain and the windshield wipers were going, and she was like, how do you focus, how do you drive and not watch the windshield wipers? Think about that for a second. Those windshield wipers are going. We don't watch the windshield wipers. We are looking outside of the window. We're looking through the window. That's a focal choice. We are taking our brain to the gym every time we choose to change our focus. Okay. Okay, so we're coming to the end. I think I have covered everything. I just want to end with this, that responsive parenting is not about being perfect. It is never about being perfect. It's about just being present. It's a practice. Everything that you will do with me is a practice, which means you show up a little bit every day and you build slowly, because parenting is a long game. We are building a fully functioning whole adult. We are doing it slowly, but every single thing we do, just like the plant outside, just like, right, just like that, everything we do matters. So we're going to build that muscle, that focus muscle. We're going to build our pause. We're going to build our capacity to slow down and get curious. And the more you pause and reflect and choose connection, the more your child is going to do the same. So I'm going to finish off with a journal prompt. For those of you who are really enjoying journaling, here's the prompt, and I'm going to add it. I'll do a post and I'll add the journal prompt, and we can kind of talk about how that's going over the course of the next week. So here's your prompt. Think about a recent moment when you reacted to your child instead of responding. What was going on for you in that moment, emotionally, physically, mentally? And if you could revisit it with more compassion for yourself or curiosity about your child, what might a more responsive version of you say or do instead? Okay, so that's it for today's live. I'm so curious if you watch this. I'd love to know your thoughts. Please share them and invite a friend to join us in Full Potential Parenting, where we are always wanting to level up our parenting. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great day.